I think for me, it's like I'm just really glad my parents are really progressive, very forward thinking. I didn't just tell him that just do your best, just stay upbeat. Don't care about what anyone says about you. You're doing a good job.
Sandy, how often do you get to talk to your father nowadays that he is now a governor?
I think this is my daily calls. Sometimes I just check in with him, send him a encouraging text message every once in a while. But usually most of the time I just talk to him about his campaign, like his policies. Like I just give him some feedback on something that he did in the previous day. There's always room for improvement. So yeah.
What kind of words do you send to your father when you want to give emotional support?
I didn't just tell him that just do your best, just stay upbeat. Don't care about what anyone says about you. You're doing a good job.
Amongst your feedback and constructive comments, was there any one particular example that you can share, like of a piece of feedback that you gave during the campaign, and then you saw him, take that feedback and then act upon it, and then it made waves in the election?
I think for me, like during the lead up to the campaign, to the election, like before the election, like I think it was like a few days before. And then my dad did something, like my dad was doing some event, and I was watching it live. And so I told him that, I noticed that, and I told him that, you should do this, instead. And then he started interacting more with the people, started establishing that rapport. So I just told him to be yourself, just be yourself, Don't try to manufacture anything. Just let it happen. Be genuine.
What would you say being your father best quality?
I think for me, I think I see it everywhere. It's always empathy. To be able to express empathy for other people, but also for yourself.
Right now, people have quite a good amount of attention towards you. What would be something that you want to contribute and what you want to convey?
I think for me, I think it's not so much about the public attention. I think as long as people can learn from something, when I'm online, live or doing an interview like this, I think as long as people can take away something from it, that's the biggest contribution I think I can make.
Lately, people learn about a very good quality from your father is that he has a very, very positive mindset. Even when in the darkest hour of democracy 8 years ago, what have you learned from him in terms of attitude?
I think for attitude, you gotta find the silver lining in everything. I think for me, it's just be optimistic. Just try to find the positive in everything, and always be kind to yourself. Love yourself. Give yourself some self-care. Don't be too harsh on yourself.
I've talked to your father quite several times, and he actually mentioned you, and I think you might have heard him talking about Mount Stupid.
Oh yeah, I heard of that. I'm not familiar with that.
It's from a book that sometimes people thought that they already learned something, that they already expertise in something, but they actually are not, and then they are in this stage of Mount Stupid, the mountain of despair. He actually tell a story about Sandy, as at the first few days that you went running with him, and then you starting to give him advice on how to run, and he said that you are in this stage of Mount Stupid. I don't know if you have recall this.
ลูกชายผมเนี่ยเขาไม่ชอบวิ่งครับเขาไม่ชอบวิ่งเลยเขาก็แบบชอบขี่จักรยานใช่ไหมเขาก็ไม่เคยวิ่งเลยวันนั้นก็เลยซื้อรองเท้าให้เขาตอนเขาก็ฟังเขาถือว่าเขาไม่มีความประสบการณ์ใช่ไหมเขาก็ฟังเราตลอดเลยเขาก็เริ่มวิ่งเขาก็วิ่งอะครับเขาค่อยๆมีความรู้เรื่องวิ่งมากขึ้นความมั่นใจก็เริ่มสูงขึ้นแค่3 วันน่ะเขามาสอนผมแล้วว่าพ่อวิ่งผิด
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, to credit to him, in all fairness, I was a bit arrogant. I think for me, the number one thing was there's this idea of constructive criticism. You have to accept that. If you're just gonna keep ignoring everything, every little phrase or every little con that comes your way, then you're not just going to improve, as a person. You're not going to mature.
In life from Seattle, I saw he mentioned about your hair color.
ย้อมผมก็สีทองไปเนี่ยไม่เป็นไรโตแล้ว
Can you tell more about how did your change your hair color and did you tell him beforehand and what did he say?
I didn't give him any warning. It just happened a boat out of the blue. So yeah, I just decided to change it one day. Just went to the salon. Just like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Yeah, I think it was more like me being expressive. Who I am.
And I really like about the relationship between Sandy and then Chad is that we know like in this day and age, right? The generation divide is generation gap is very, very, very wide, right? It's very actually if you talk to anyone or any family in Thailand, they will always say like, oh, the parents and the children and the grandparents will have like certain debates and differing viewpoints. Just wondering, like in your household, like do you and your father disagree on many things, or actually you tend to agree on most things?
I think for me, it's like I'm just really glad my parents are really progressive, very forward thinking. They're not just like set back in their own ways, like traditional, like they're just like you need to do this certain way, There's a bit flexible, there's a bit of flexibility. You're just like you do it, then you do it, It is what it is. You just set me for who I am, I think that should be the norm going forward in Thailand, People to be open to discussion and just to be like this certain like communication between both sides. I know there's some certain things that me and him disagree on, like policies and politics, but as far as everything goes, you need to be able to have a healthy relationship with your parents, but also the people around you, the community around you.
Can you recall maybe one of arguments or things that you may agree or disagree? I want to visualize what kind of conversation that you have with your father regarding something that serious and matters. It doesn't have to be politics.
Yeah, for me, I think it was about the U.S. election in 2020. My dad was like supporting like Democrats, the Joe Biden. I was in the middle, I was like, I was deciding between Trump and Biden. I just told my dad that this Biden was not going to work out for the country. So I just kept arguing that,
When you touch upon these topics, I want to ask about how does your father makes you feel safe in terms of your expressing your opinion?
I think for me, the most important thing is listening, You can't just like rebut or like you can't just like butt in every argument. You need to be able to listen, like take feedback and like, just understand the perspective at least. Even the person that's saying the opinion is wrong, even the person's personality might not be favorable. You have to at least understand their point of view, why they come to this conclusion. I think it's really unique time in Thai politics. We're like talking at a time where everybody's like involved like political participation. Everybody's active right now. So I think for some of them to want to lead the country, I totally understand that. They feel like they don't have a voice in their country. They don't feel like they're being involved in the process. They're not being included. They're feeling excluded. They feel like they're not given enough opportunities to prosper. So they have to go somewhere else for a chance at better life, better quality of life, better standard of living.
How does the politics in the US allows younger generation to feel like they are inclusive?
I feel like it's like the U.S. Constitution itself. It's like the strongest document, the legal legislation, because you have to follow like the tenet of the Constitution. It allows for free speech. So there's like this idea of like public expression. So people feel like, oh, I can say anything I can say. But yeah, obviously there are limits to that. There are also limitations to that. Like whatever you say, it might hurt someone. So yeah, I think there's like this feeling in America, this atmosphere that people are like say that okay, I can do whatever I want. But in Thailand, this environment is a bit restrictive. People feel like whatever they say, they might be censored, or they might invite some room for controversy.
I think is there anything you want to add on this topic?
Yeah, two quick points. I think firstly, to analyze the trend about like leaving the country, right? I think one thing that I noticed is that the like how the younger generations view the relationship between the state and the citizens is actually very interesting. Because if you talk to older generation, they may use the language that signify that they view the relationship between the state and the citizens like one of a parent and a child, right? So in that sense, it's a relationship that can never be broken. And then to a certain extent, a good parent is one that can look after their children well. But even if the parents cannot do that, the children kind of have to stick with it and tolerate quite a bit, right? But I think younger generations see the relationship between state and citizen as one of like a consumer and a company, right? And I would go as far as to say like a country is like Netflix, right? So you pay a membership fee. It's an annual subscription fee, which is the tax that you pay, right? And then with that subscription fee, you expect a good service or good content, right? And if to a certain extent the company is not responding to what you are saying, then you feel like I might as well pay my subscription fees elsewhere and move platform that can provide better content for the same amount of money that I pay into. And I think that's kind of an analogy of what happened with the trend of younger generations wanting to leave. They feel that the taxes that they're paying are not being converted into good content or good public services, right? So I think that's one thing. And I think Sandy's point is true. It's not the younger generations don't want like just a perfect house to be built for them, but they want to be involved in the process of building that house, even if it may not be the most perfect house the first time. But right now in Thailand, the house that people are building for younger generation is far from perfect, and yet the younger generations are not involved in building that house either. So that's the first point. The second point, very quick one, which is I think what I want to, this is more communicating to older generations. And I think a lot of them are understanding of the fact that they need to listen to younger generations more. But I want them to listen to younger generations, not as younger generations, but listen to younger generation as people, as co-owners of the country. May say that, oh, they've listened to the youth. We know what the youth are saying, but they still only listen to them as opinions of the youth, which they feel is, maybe of a lesser value than opinions of the older generation. So I think what we really need is people to listen to each other's opinions as equals, right? As co-owners of the country, not as an older generation looking down and just hearing what the youth are saying. So I think that's important.
Oh yeah, I just want to add to what you said. I think there's like this feedback loop that's between the old generation and the young generation. Like whenever the new generation should express the idea, you see the older generation just shoot it down or just like try to like attack it like aggressively. So it's not really like a consistent feedback loop. So whenever like the younger generation is trying to say something, it's always met with opposition. The ideas are always like considered like too dangerous for society. So there needs to be like a clear line of communication between both sides. There needs to be some sort of acceptance. People need to be willing to be open. Obviously, not everybody's going to agree in some idea, some aspect, but at least there needs to be some like discussion that's healthy, mature. And there's always room for feedback. There's always room for criticism and debate.
TODAY Bizview ความรู้ธุรกิจเพื่อวันนี้